Good afternoon. This is the daily weather briefing for Friday, February 24th, 2017. And we've got a lot of weather coming up today. And this is a special severe weather analysis to look at the potential severe weather in the Midwest. So let's get started so we can take a look at what's going on currently across the United States. And it's not too hard to understand that we have a very prominent low pressure system centered over Illinois right now, with a lot of cold air spilling into the central and north central parts of the United States. Colder air that we have not seen in quite a while here, with temperatures now into the teens in parts of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, with blizzard conditions to the north side and a very strong warm sector to the south side of this low pressure system. Something we're going to have to watch here today. The West Coast is pretty quiet right now, which is quite unusual considering the weather we've had over the last several weeks. But it's kind of nice for them to dry out and warm up a little bit. A few scattered showers in the northwest. The northeastern portion of the United States has some scattered showers along this cold front slash stationary front. And then we have this interesting little storm system out here in the Atlantic, which is kind of stirring up the seas a little bit, but it's a little bit of a storm system creating some showers and thunderstorms out there out in the Bahamas and also out in Bermuda. Looking at the watch warning map here, we have on the east west side of the United States, we have some winter weather advisories along the coastal regions and some flash flood warnings continuing in portions of California and in Nevada. Winter weather advisories here in Utah, and winter storm warnings that extend pretty much from Wyoming all the way into Wisconsin, with blizzard warnings over Iowa and just south of Minnesota there, where the nasty weather is taking place right now. We also have red flag warnings in effect for most of southwestern portion of Texas and the southeastern portion of New Mexico for strong winds and very dry conditions, and flash flood advisories, or excuse me, flood watches in effect now for the northeastern portion of the United States, where warmer weather is moving into that area, and they're now going to get some runoff from the intense snow they've had over the last couple of weeks in that area. Looking at the satellite, the visible satellite, again, we can see the storm system in the central portion of the United States with pretty much a stationary warm front slash cold front over the northern tier of the state, which really separates the warm air from the cold air. And then we've got some scattered showers that are beginning to form just to the south of the blizzard that's going on across Illinois and Indiana. And then we can really see that strong storm system out here in the Atlantic. Looking at the radar at this point in time, not a lot really showing up on radar right now. We've got some scattered showers and snow showers coming onto the west coast here. Nothing very prominent or strong at this point. A little bit of snow out here in Idaho. We have our blizzard going on out here between Lincoln, Nebraska, all the way up into the upper Midwest. It's not really showing up very well here, but there is most of it's wind right now at this point. And then we have some scattered showers and thunderstorms that are beginning to form out here in Illinois and Indiana, just ahead of the main low pressure system and the cold front at this point. And then some scattered rain showers and maybe a few isolated thunder showers out here in upper New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Now, just taking a quick look at our winter analysis here, and this is as of between now and for the next 72 hours. And the upper Midwest is going to see anywhere between an additional 8 to 10 inches of snow. Sault Ste. Marie will probably see about 10 inches of snow between now and the 27th of February. But this is going to be the real critical factor is going to be the lowering temperatures that are going to be dropping quite rapidly from the record highs that we had earlier in this week, as well as the blowing winds. Winds gusting up to about 30 to 40 miles per hour, going to create very dangerous wind chills in this area here. So blowing and drifting is going to be a dramatic aspect in this area. Travel should not be happening if you're living in these areas during this time. Now we're going to focus on the severe weather analysis at this point in time. And yesterday there was only 3 events that took place. Some small wind events that took place along the warm front just north of Gary, Indiana. There, nothing too strong or prominent at this point in time. But looking at today's severe weather analysis or severe weather outlook, right now we have an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms extending all the way into Michigan, just north of Detroit, all the way down towards Indianapolis, down to Louisville, just north of Lexington, into Lancaster, all the way to Mansfield, Ohio, just to the east of Cleveland, or excuse me, west of Cleveland. A slight risk surrounds that area, and then a marginal risk extends all the way down into Alabama and Georgia at this point. We're gonna examine what the potential is for this area here. Let's look at the current satellite in that area, a visible satellite, and you can see quite a bit of agitated clouds beginning to form. The low pressure system right here is now just a little bit to the northeast of Peoria. You can see the cold front extending from that, and out in front of that we're beginning to see some scattered agitated towering cumulus ahead of that cold front. So we'll begin to see a band of showers and thunderstorms that will develop along that cold front, but we'll also see some scattered activity that develops ahead of that. Now what we're showing right now is there's quite a bit of cloud cover to the west of, between a line from Detroit to Fort Wayne to Indianapolis down to Vincennes. East of that line, there's nothing but clear skies, so they have full sun insulation at this point in time, so they're getting full heating at this time. So this is going to be a very an important factor when we get into this potential for severe weather later this afternoon and this evening. Now here's probably one of the more limiting factors that's causing the issue. When we were looking at the satellite picture a few moments ago, the larger satellite picture, we saw that storm system that moved off the Florida coast here, and that's really the main reason why we are not seeing a greater risk here when it comes to, or a wider risk for potential for severe weather, and it's because the dew points are being held down. The atmosphere did not have a chance, even though we have very warm temperatures. The winds were mostly out of the northeast and preventing the Gulf of Mexico from opening up and allowing more moisture to come into the atmosphere during this time. So therefore, the moisture that we have, though it is sufficient, is kind of anemic when it comes to some of the greater severe weather events that we've had in the past in this region. Although we're not going to sit here and say that this is by no means a weak event. We're not quite sure what's going to happen as far as the intensity level, but we are showing some weak values when it comes to moisture content, and also the boundary layer, though it is not shadow by any means, it is not quite as high as we'd like to see. Maybe dew points in the 60s, mid 60s to get a higher severe weather risk, but that's probably a good thing here considering the parameters involved. We do have dew points up near this warm front up to about 59 degrees, but it trails off very quickly. We have quite an area of kind of dry air here at the surface here. Over the enhanced risk area, we do have a little bit more moisture content, and further south we have some moisture content. We do have a good low-level jet that is screaming up from the south here, but it's not pulling up as much moisture as we'd like to see to have a higher risk in this area. Looking at the convective available potential energy, we are beginning to see values approach the 1,000 joules per kilogram. In these areas, we have some near the triple point, just a little bit to the west of Peoria. Now, I really believe this low has now moved a little bit more towards the northeast now, so these values are beginning to move towards Champaign and just to the north of Lafayette, where we're beginning to see some of those scattered storms developing. But towards the southeast here, we've got really low values here, and these values will be moving northeastward throughout the day here. So I'm beginning to feel, and I'm going to change my pen value here. I'm beginning to feel that really the greater risk for severe weather is going to be probably in this region here, simply because we're losing the convective available energy, and this area is going to become less and less conducive for severe weather. We'll see some begin to form here just a little bit out here by Lafayette and Kokomo, but I think we'll see that value begin to decrease as these begin to translate towards the east-northeast here. I think really where the greater severe weather risk is going to be extending all the way from Detroit all the way to just west, or excuse me, east of Indianapolis down to around Cincinnati, up to about Dayton, up to about Findlay, and back up to Detroit. That's probably going to be the prime area where we're going to see the greater severe weather risk and probably the higher end levels of severe weather later today. Now looking at the storm relative helicity, now again this is another kind of limiting factor. We like to see the helicity values a little bit higher, you know, primarily a greater than 400 meters per second, but 300 meters per second is nothing to sneeze at. So again, we see some values out here around Champaign and Springfield. These areas will begin to translate towards the northeast. As we saw those thunderstorms beginning to form here, that will have some impact later on today. The higher values, again, obviously are in this area here, so again, it's kind of displaced from where the potential of severe weather is. Let's take a look at the 850 millibar wind speeds. We have winds of 55 knots pretty much screaming out of the south-southwest here. And really, we would like to see this more like this to have a more significant tornado element to it. So if anything, we'll probably see more of a damaging wind event than tornado event. But again, these are pretty strong, and we'll begin to see this increase as time goes throughout the day. But this is pretty significant for this time of the day. Looking at the 700 millibar wind speeds, now again, we saw the 850 millibar wind speeds about right here. These are a little bit further to the west and tighter into the low pressure system. Winds about 65 knots down here. These will be translating up into this area region here. So as it moves towards the northeast, again, we're not seeing the crossing of the winds here. So again, there's a little bit of a displacement here. So this is significant when it comes to the kind of severe weather we're going to have. Again, looking at the 500 millibar winds, this is a pretty potent mid-level jet of 115 knots or so. And we look at the areas of anticyclonic and cyclonic winds, and usually the quadrants here give us an indication of where the better potential of severe weather can often happen. And we still have a lot of cyclonic activity down here west of where the severe weather is. This will be translating towards the towards the east. And this area down here is going to be translating up towards the northeast as time goes on. So if it catches up in time to the low-level jet and also towards the other parameters, this is where we could see more significant weather developing in this area here down the road, where all modes would be more likely to take place here. I think towards the east here, there is a tornado threat that's going to be a lot less, but the greater risk will probably be hail and damaging winds, as well as towards the east of this hatched area that I'm hatching in here, where I think the greatest tornado risk will probably be today if they can develop at that point in time. So I'm going to look at some of these skew T-plots, and this is out of Lincoln, Illinois at this point. And this is at 12Z, so a lot's probably changed since then. We do see a little bit of mid-level CAPE at this point in time, convective available energy, and that makes sense. That's probably translated towards the east, and the reason why we're beginning to see some scattered thunderstorm activity. The boundary layer for moisture is pretty significant, so we have enough. The boundary layer is not shallow by any means, so we have enough moisture there, but it's not extremely strong. Not a real significant cap at this point, so I think that this will break throughout the day, especially when the colder air rush ins. But I think the colder air will rush in underneath it and probably cut off the ability around Illinois to have any significant severe weather. The interesting point here is we do have a little bit better directional shear here in Illinois than we do have further towards the east. The winds are a little bit more out of the south-southeast and then translate very quickly towards the south-southwest and western and southwest location. Speed shear is not a problem by any means. It's just mostly just directional shear that tends to be the problem here. Moving on towards looking at the Wilmington, Ohio sounding. Again, we do have some mid-level CAPE values here in the atmosphere here, so we have that to work with a little bit. The one thing to note here, though, is we have a very strong low-level jet, but the winds, again, here are primarily out of the southwest. So we have more of a unidirectional setup here. So that would be more of a indication of a damaging wind event than we would have a tornado event at this point in time. And again, one thing to say at this point is, again, this was at 12Z, so I'm sure that we'll be doing more uh, radio sound reports here probably a little bit later in the afternoon to determine what the weather conditions will be like. Now, the other thing to note here is the lapse rates are a little low right now at this point, especially in the lower part of the atmosphere, but we expect these to increase later on today. And there is a little bit of a cap somewhere between 800 and 700 millibars that could cause, and that's a good reason why we have clear skies in that area. So that would be a help for thunderstorms to develop later on. It's not a very strong cap, so I don't think it's going to be an issue for thunderstorms to grow. Now, one thing to note here is the equilibrium level, and this level here indicates that thunderstorms will probably max out around 30 to 40,000 feet. We won't see storms getting much higher than that. It just depends on how big this Cape value grows at this point in time. Now, here's an interesting plot chart that's been being used lately, and it was had a lot of prominence back in the severe weather event that took back in December. Excuse me, not in December, but in late December, early January of last year. Excuse me, late January of this last month down in the southeast, and this is what they call the updraft helicity, the 2 to 5K above ground level helicity. And what we see here is thunderstorm activity that has the ability to have rotating updrafts, and what we see here is the values are not extremely high. We're probably between in some cases we have most values are between 10 and 15. We have a few values that reach up to 25 out here in southeastern Illinois, and then we've got a couple of values here in northeastern Ohio and portions of central Michigan. Now, again, these are a model here, and the models have not done well in the last several severe weather events. But this is a pretty good indication of where we may have some rotating thunderstorms that have the potential of possibly producing tornadoes. And because these storms are moving very quickly, they're going to be long tracked in the sense that they'll have a long life with them. Again, the speed shear is tremendous. It's just the directional shear that's not really in place to create the rotation that would possibly cause long track damaging tornadoes. But there are some areas and indications, again, kind of what we talked about earlier, that we do have this potential here, that I think we have to watch this area here. And this is a little bit larger than what I painted before here, but I think really in this area here is where we have the potential that we could see some more significant severe weather potential later on down the road today. So just to sum up just a little bit about the severe weather potential, pros for the severe weather, we definitely have speed shear. These storms are going to be clocking close to 40 to 60 miles per hour. So storms that move will move very quickly, and anything that does produce some kind of tornadic activity, these storms will move very quickly and may stay on the ground for a while if they're able to produce that. The storm relative helicity is high enough for supercells, but not quite there for significant tornadoes. So we're kind of on the lower end of that aspect of things. The surface-based CAPE is about 1,000 joules per kilogram, which is significant when you consider that we're in latter February. So that's not really an issue at this point in time. It's just the location is not lining up very well right now, and it's mostly stuck around the cold front region in the triple point. Strong low-level jet and mid-level jet, but they are not quite close enough right now to create the shear that needs to be there, the directional shear. There is clearing in the warm sector, so that is a significant indicator for potential severe weather down the road. Now, some of the cons is, again, I mentioned earlier, the directional shear is weak, especially over the lower levels of the atmosphere. We've got this displacement of the mid and upper level jet from the low level jet. Now, we expect the low level jet to increase later today, but again, it's just the directional shear is pretty weak at this point. EHI values, are borderline, but they're increasing in some aspects. They're right now about a 1.2 and 1.4 along the eastern portion of Indiana and western portion of Ohio, and then there's a little bit of an increasing value out there about north central Illinois. So there are values, and I think that'll translate into northern Indiana later on today. Storms may form in a quasi-convective line segment and not discrete cells. What we're beginning to see in visible satellite is we're beginning to see lines, segments of thunderstorms, and we might see some isolated discrete cells that form out ahead of it or along those lines that could possibly produce tornadoes. But again, I think we're right now, to be honest with you, I think we're kind of at a high level slight risk and a low level enhanced risk. And when it comes to severe weather today, I don't think we're at a very high level, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the day translates. Again, we're lacking some of the moisture that we like to see for higher end events, but that doesn't mean. And one thing I need to stress here is that it just takes one tornado in the wrong place at the wrong time to be a significant event. And that's one thing we want to make clear here, is that even though this may not be a large outbreak of severe weather, it might be more of a damaging wind event. But if we do get one or two tornadoes to form, the storms will be moving quite quickly, and they could become long-tracked if they're able to stay on the ground long enough. Again, because of that circumstance, it does make it a potentially dangerous situation, and people need to be alert to that. Any storm that produces a tornado could be a dangerous storm, and people need to be alert to that fact. Anyway, we want to thank you for watching. We'll keep you advised. Take a look at our Ustream site over at Daily Weather Briefing, and we'll keep you advised throughout the day of this potential activity. Thank you.